Welcome into For FF's Sake. Evan Harris here, and I am super excited to introduce my guest today. We're going to be talking a little bit of redraft, deep value, value and risk, so to speak, on some players. But without further ado, welcome to the show, Jay Larky. You can find him on Twitter at JLarkyTweets, TikTok, JLarkyTikToks, creator of thatourcodingsite.com. Former CAO of Etienne and director of analytics at Player Profiler. Now he has a new project he's working on. Let him introduce himself right now.
That was awesome. I was hoping that we'd get the radio voice. There it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to be here. Yeah. I was talking with a friend earlier and they were like, you should just call yourself an analytics nomad traveling by camel through the desert. So that is what I am. I'm an analytics nomad for the month of June until I start a new position July 1st. So
I'm so disappointed that wasn't in my introduction notes now, because that would have sounded so cool.
He's an analytics nomad traveling across the desert. As you can see, I'm trying to do a radio voice and doing it just absolutely horribly. So I think I'll just leave that for you.
Yeah, some small plug for WCDT Radio. So our podcast, I didn't tell you this, Josh, before we started recording. Our podcast actually goes to a podcast network under a local radio station that I call Friday Night Football Games for. So a lot of like local listeners as well. That's helped us kind of build a local fan base early on in the show.
I like it. Hello, all the local listeners. As you can see,
Winchester, Tennessee.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you can tell by my voice, I am not from Winchester, Tennessee. So we're going across the U.S. right now. I'm located in San Diego. Evan, let's do this.
You got some work coming out, and we'll kind of touch on that as we go as well. But is there anything before we kind of go into some of these players that you want to talk about, some upcoming work or anything like that?
Oh, this is just a total self-improvement month. I have a ton of different phone calls set up with people that lead analytics teams, people that lead sales teams, industry thought leaders in fantasy football, just becoming a sponge, reading a lot, listening to a lot of podcasts. I'll be hiring and leading a new fantasy football department coming up shortly. So
hold on. Let me go get my suit jacket and my tie. I didn't know this was an interview. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
So that will be coming up at the very beginning of July. So July 1st, I'll start that new role. So this is just a nice prep month. Just going to do 20-ish hours of work type stuff a week, lounge a lot, walk the dog a lot, get a little extra workouts in, maybe try a couple of restaurants in the area I've been thinking about. So this will be just a nice little transition month for me. So a lot more podcast time. I haven't been able to guest on many podcasts recently. Been so busy. So it'll be a fun June.
You've had a busy day. You put that out on Twitter, and everybody can go to your Twitter again, JLarkyTweets, and see some of the stuff you've done just today. I made a comment on there. I saw all these names that you were working with today. And I was like, man, I kind of feel like a Make-A-Wish kid. I just kind of got put in here and got you to come onto the show. So I'm super excited. We're gonna you're the guy that I look out for analytics. So let's start with your guy. Who is the guy that you are not leaving drafts with? We'll look at redraft first, and then we'll look at dynasty. I'll start us off. My redraft guy that I do not want to leave drafts for. I'm going to overdraft him. And I got some league mates listening, so now they're going to make me pay. That's how this goes, right? Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is a guy that I want in every type of redraft league I can find. I think there's dynasty value as well, but this is one specifically for this season. I think you're looking at a guy who could hit that 160 target mark, which is just volume city. I really look, now that they are out of that Matt Nagy offense, I really look for him to take a big jump overall in terms of Justin Fields. Sorry, I better name the quarterback right. And then I think the knock on Mooney has been, well, Allen Robinson's not there. He's going to get extra attention. Well, obviously, those people don't watch football because his best games were when Allen Robinson wasn't on the field last season. So really excited for him. And if you got a rebuttal, you can share that on Mooney and then share your guy.
So I will say I like Mooney as well. I'm gonna caution you. I think 160 is a little too optimistic.
Okay.
I don't think he quite gets there. Just Justin Fields is a mobile quarterback, so he'll take some pass attempts out of that offense.
Yeah.
I'm also worried. I don't think it's going to be a very good offense.
Oh,
I don't think they're going to have a lot of plays per drive. I think I don't know about 160, but I could see a repeat of 140 from last year. And that was still top 10, top 12 in the league for just raw target volume.
Yeah.
I like him as well.
I think his floor is going to be, and which is crazy to say for a floor. I think his floor is going to be somewhere around that 110, 115 range. I do think if young quarterback, stare down a receiver, I think he could get up there. Now, are all those targets going to be catchable? Maybe not, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Who's your redraft guy, Josh? You're the guy you are not leaving drafts without if you can help it.
So I can't stop talking this guy up.
Okay.
It is Russell Gage. I mean, how do I not want to take what should be the Buccaneers wide receiver 2 for at least half of the season when he goes in like the 9th, 10th round of redraft? And there's people out there that go, oh, no, you don't understand. Chris Godwin got extended. And to that, I say, no. You don't understand. Chris Godwin tore his ACL at the end of last season. And if you give him a 12-month recovery, that means that he misses the season because he got injured at the end of last season. So what you're hoping for is some miracle 9 to 10 month recovery, which can happen. Mm-hmm. And that then suddenly, what is he going to be 100% right from the get-go? I've seen reports that say he's targeting Thanksgiving to come back. And that to me screams Russell Gage fantasy points. Russell Gage had a 22% target share last year with the Falcons. That's a higher target share than rookie phenom Kyle Pitts. I'm not saying he's better than Kyle Pitts, but he did just out target him. Tom Brady handpicked him. A lot of people, they say, Josh, I don't like when you say that he didn't handpick him. What are you talking about? And to that I say, then what do you want to call Tom Brady calling Russell Gage on his cellular phone and saying, hey, Russell, I want you to play for the Buccaneers.
Get on over here.
I don't know what people want me to call that. It sounds a whole lot like Tom Brady watched him a lot because interdivision, I mean, we got the Falcons, we got the Buccaneers in the NFC South. He watched him 2 times a year the past 2 seasons and thought, wow, I want to throw the ball to that guy. So to tell me that you're getting basically Chris Godwin's role in the 9th, 10th round, I am very overexposed to Russell Gage.
I'm really excited about Russell Gage. That's one that I seriously thought about putting here as well. For all the reasons you mentioned, I was hoping you were going to leave a reason for me to like pick up on and throw on there, but you hit all the points, man. I'm really excited about Russell Gage. The scary part is, does Godwin come back? But I think you're flipping a coin there. The other side of that coin, that the people that want to say he's going to be back earlier, they're not looking at situations like Michael Thomas recovering from injury. I know different injury. I'm just saying setbacks happen. And sometimes when you have a guy that's pushing back, especially after a knee, then you have to look for hamstring, soft tissue injuries. So I'm not an injury analyst per se, but I'm all over some Russell Gage. And who's to say, it's not full year before, even if Godwin comes back mid-season, before he's really getting that quarterback connection again, because he's been out all season and Brady's throwing other guys. I think that's an interesting offense. I don't think enough people are talking up Mike Evans this year as well as a potential
100%
high wide receiver 1 finish. All right. So I started with redraft. You just told us your redraft. Who's your dynasty guy that if you're in a startup this year, you don't want to leave that dynasty draft without?
So let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs offense.
Okay.
So in this Kansas City Chiefs passing offense, we have Travis Kelce. We all know him. He turns 33 years old in October. If you look at the yards per route run, targets per route run, target share, basically any efficiency metric that you can find that's in any way predictive, they were all significantly lower in 2021 than they were the last 6-7 years of his career. I think age might be catching up a little bit to Travis Kelce. I'm not saying that the cliff is coming, but if anything, he is either maintaining or starting to decline. He is not ascending. We have Mecole Hardman. He's a gadget guy. He's pretty much a 2nd round pick who busted in the NFL. At this point, we are 3 years into that experiment. It is clear he is not the guy. We have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who signed his big 3-year, $30 million extension. And in 4 years with the Packers, he never eclipsed above a 14% target share, which is very low. And his career catch rate is below 50%. So people being like, oh, he's got Patrick Mahomes. That is totally fine with me. He had Aaron Rodgers. I think they're pretty similar quarterbacks. So if he was never fantasy relevant with Rodgers, I am inclined to think that he probably won't be very fantasy relevant week to week with Mahomes. Then we have Juju Smith-Schuster, who has been on the decline for the past 4 seasons. after his miraculous year 2 1,400-yard season where Antonio Brown was double covered on pretty much every single snap, and he was looking frequently at the cornerback 2, cornerback 3 on that defense. He gets some cornerback 1 attention. It turns out he is actually a very limited slot only player. And through 4 weeks of last year before getting injured in week 5, he was being out targeted by Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool and Najee Harris. And Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool both played 3 games, not 4, when Juju had played 4 games during that stretch. I don't know what to make of him, but all I know is that he is not an ascending player, which leads us to Skyy Moore. And I want more Skyy Moore because Skyy Moore is an ascending player. He was their round 2 pick. Skyy Moore, little backstory. As you can see, there's a love affair going on between Josh Larky and Skyy Moore.
The hearts are going around your head right now.
There's some love in the air. So with Skyy Moore, in high school, he was a quarterback and a cornerback. He was given a full scholarship to Western Michigan, and they said, we don't know what position you're going to play, but all we know is that you're pretty awesome at football. Player. And they thought he was going to play cornerback. He tried receiver. And by say tried, I mean that he led the team in receiving as a true freshman with 802 yards. I mean, what? Year 2, COVID hits. He barely plays, but he's dominant when he plays. He only plays 5 games. Year 3, as a junior in 2021, he leads the team in receiving again, over 100 yards receiving per game. He leads the MAC conference in touchdown receptions. And then he goes early in the draft because he goes middle of round 2 to the Chiefs. If you're telling me that Skyy Moore, who comes from a small school type program, only played 2.5 years in college at a position he was learning on the fly and gets drafted that early and has absolutely ridiculous production metrics, and he's really fast and shifty, and he's also, while he's on the shorter end, he's got some size. He's nearly 200 pounds. I don't know what I'm missing. Skyy Moore looks like the clear ascending player who's tied to Patrick Mahomes for at least the next 4 seasons, and he is just too cheap.
So the only argument you can make against Skyy Moore as that potential wide receiver 1, I think, is if you just completely do this when you're looking at all the numbers. I do not have him in as many leagues as I would like. And by that, I literally don't have him in any yet. I'm in a startup right now. So that's possible. I do think, though, is there any concern? I guess if you're drafting him in Dynasty, you're not too concerned about it, but a slow start. Just kind of learning that Andy Reid offense that can be a little complicated. I mean, we looked at several guys have taken a year to really get going in that offense.
That's definitely a concern. It is one of the more complicated offenses. Obviously, I don't know how it's going to shape up. You don't know how it's going to shape up. We can only speculate, but I will say that him being recruited to play cornerback in college and then leading the team as a true freshman in receiving yards, it shows me that this is a quick learner. So obviously he might bust, and then people go, wow, Josh, way to recommend an absolute NFL bust. Obviously that can happen, but at least with that data point, I think, you know what? He has shown us that he can pick up a new position immediately. So why not being able to pick up the Kansas City Chiefs offense immediately?
No, right there with you. All right. So my guy for Dynasty that I do not want to leave a Dynasty draft without, I was high on him last year and really think he would have had a breakout season last year, if not for the preseason injury, is Rashod Bateman, wide receiver 1 for the Baltimore Ravens. So I don't have as many points with Rashod Bateman. What I can tell you is he's 6'3", 190 was what he was coming out. I'm sure he's bigger than that now. I mean, the guy looks ripped. Good speed score, right? 4.4, 340, good 20 split and 10 split. If you look at his numbers, above average, kind of in that more elite territory. I think this is a guy that is going to be an absolute safety blanket for Lamar Jackson. I just do. Perfect example of why we draft talent over situation a lot of times. He was a guy who was not in a great situation. I had him in a lot of dynasties, and boom, Marquise Brown gets traded off. Here he comes in as the number 1 guy. I think that when you look at Lamar Jackson last year, he really improved as a passer. The funny thing is, everybody's like, oh, mobile quarterback, he's going to get hurt, not turning this into a Lamar Jackson thing, but he got hurt in the pocket. It was a routine quarterback play where he's in the pocket and he gets hurt, right? So for Rashod Bateman, he's a guy that I don't want to leave drafts without. And I think because of the injury last year and him coming on a little bit later in the season, his ADP and where it's at in startup drafts is lower than it should be. I'm seeing him go in that, sixth, seventh round, which I think is a great value to grab him at.
Yeah, I agree. I think the data point that I really like with Rashod Bateman is that he had the core muscle surgery and missed the start of the season and still actually had kind of a respectable rookie year. I think he was getting like 15% of the team's targets. A lot of things that when you look, you go, wow, that's pretty above average for what we would expect from a rookie. And then you remember that he missed a lot of training camp. He missed the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. I'm pretty excited to see with a full healthy off season what he can do, because he was someone that I really, really liked coming out of college. I thought he was just super productive. I want to say it was Minnesota, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
he was playing. I remember he played with Tyler Johnson there, if I remember correctly.
And so, he broke out his 18-year-old breakout age, I think later on in 18. College target share, here's your number, 35.7% target share in college, playing along another NFL draft pick. So just to kind of give you some notice there. Really, really excited about Rashod Bateman this season. All right. Let's move on just a little bit. We're going to move into some ADP rounds. Okay. We're going to move towards what are guys that are risks at ADP and what are guys that are value at ADP. Kind of hard to find value at rounds 1 through 3, but we're going to try it. All right. So I listed some names down. We don't have to go over all of them, but, and Josh, I don't know about you. I have really in my redraft leagues and Dynasty went more safe than risk in the first early rounds of my redrafts. I've been burnt by the big injuries. Dalvin Cook, if I draft him, he's going to get hurt that season. So I'm not drafting him this season. So I'm sure that's why he's going to go off and be a top 5 running back again and not get hurt. I always forget to grab Madison. That's just bad management there, ain't it? So potential risk guys we have, I listed a few out. A guy that I think is a big value right now, and I guess you could flip that coin and say risk, but Saquon Barkley is going at the end of second rounds right now. He's going, I've seen him as late as the top of the 3rd round. How are you feeling about Barkley this season? A former, he's been a top 5 pick the last 3 seasons, it's felt like. Is that a guy that you would target at that ADP and feel good about?
So Saquon Barkley, he tears his ACL. He recovers last year. He starts off slow. He plays under 50% of the snaps in week 1. Then he has a full workload in week 2, and he looks good, but not great. Weeks 3 and weeks 4, he gives you over 20 fantasy points in both those games, including well over 100 yards in that week 4 game. And it looks like Saquon Barkley is back. And then he rolls his ankle. And it's just, you hate to see just a total fluke injury like that. Of course, when he comes back at that point, Daniel Jones is shuffling in and out of the lineup. Kadarius Toney shuffling in and out of the lineup. Kenny Galladay in and out of the lineup. Sterling Shepard in and
what
out of
might
the lineup.
have been the worst ran offense in the NFL last year.
Oh yeah, they will never recover from. It was like 5 yards from their own goal line, and it was 3rd and 9, and they ran the ball up the middle for like a loss of 1.
The quarterback sneak like 3 times in a row.
Yeah, they had some play calling that just signaled that they knew Joe Judge wasn't going to be there long term and that they were just tanking for draft capital. Yeah. Turns out they got some good draft capital. This offense looks like it's going to be improved. The Bills coaching staff is there. And if Saquon Barkley was a late round 1 pick last year coming off the ACL tear, and we saw that he is in fact recovered from the ACL, he looked pretty explosive in those week 3, week 4 games before he rolled his ankle. I am all in on Saquon. I don't quite understand why he isn't just once again a late round 1 pick. Daniel Jones is back. They actually have some decent weapons on offense. I think this could be a sneaky average-ish offense for 2022. And with someone like Saquon Barkley, when you look at the depth chart, it goes, oh, Matt Breida is the RB2. He is going to get a lot of work. There's just nobody else there. I'm excited for 20 Barkley touches a game and an improved offense. And I'm with you. Value.
When guys like Jashaun Corbin are getting picked up like crazy off the waiver wire, you should feel good about your Barkley shares. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, when that happened, I was like, I'm sorry, who is this guy? And then I looked, I'm like, oh, the Giants grabbed him. Oh, yeah, that's because Breida's there, I guess, is the backup. All right. So, yeah, he just a truly abominable depth chart after Saquon.
So who's your safest round 1 target? So the guy, if you're sitting in the middle of round 1, you got picked 6 through 8, somewhere in that range. Who's the guy that is your safest bet that okay, I can stick by this guy. You feel good about him. I know we don't project injuries, but when you're in the first round, I think that's something you have to look at. So who's your safest value in that first round, or even just safest pick?
So sometimes if you're lucky, Justin Jefferson is there in the middle of round 1. He is just
ding, ding, ding.
250 more receiving yards through his first 2 seasons than any other player in NFL history. Yeah. Justin Jefferson is the real deal. He was 3rd in the NFL in target share behind only Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp. What happened to Cooper Kupp? He is now playing with Allen Robinson. What happened to Devontae Adams? He now is been traded and he's competing for targets with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. Justin Jefferson, on the other hand, is competing with an aging Adam Thielen.
Yep.
And they just got the Rams offensive coordinator. Kevin O'Connell is now the head coach of the Vikings. So if you're telling me that there's a potential that Justin Jefferson, who has already been a high-end wide receiver 1, that they could be passing more, and that if he's getting 30% target share with a greater pie of targets, then 30% of a larger number is larger than 30% of a smaller number. I want more and more Justin Jefferson targets. So if he is ever there, it's Jefferson.
Yeah. Thielen, he's 32 or 33, or maybe he's going to be playing at that age when the season rolls around. KJ Osborne is a sneaky player, I think, this season, but neither one of those guys at their best at what they could be this season are going to take away from Justin Jefferson. He's proven to be durable as well. I'm super excited about year 3 for Jefferson. He's my wide receiver 1 this year, like without a doubt. So I'm right there with you on him. I think another guy in that round that is falling is, I'm going to get butchered. I'm going to be called such a homer for saying this. To me, if you grab Derrick Henry at pick 7 or 8, anything after 6, anything after what I feel is a big tier break, and we're talking redraft, we're not talking super flex, you have a chance to have the guy that's going to be RB1 this year. And I've heard he's had his effectiveness on the usage has went down. I agree, but the usage is elite. We can all agree. And that usage isn't going anywhere. If anything, that usage may go up. So we go back to last year real quick. I am a Titans fan, so I'm going to talk about this from watching the game more than the analytical side. And then Josh, you can tear me apart if I'm just dead wrong on this afterwards. I get tore down by my cohort a lot of times in this when we do our shows together. The show's called For Fantasy Football's Sake. You argue any side of it, right? When you look at Derrick Henry from last year, he was on pace to double his career high in targets, receptions, and receiving touchdowns. So I'm not saying, hey, Derrick Henry's the next CMC or Eckler. I would never go that far. But if we're looking at a guy whose usage has already been elite, and you're going to tell me instead of 18 catches a season, he's going to have somewhere near 40 if that trend continues, not considering the fact that A.J. Brown's no longer on this team, Anthony Ferkser's no longer on this team. There's 351 targets to reallocate this year. Derrick Henry could be in line for the largest workload at any point of his career. And that's saying something considering the workload he's already had. The injury concern, I get. He had an injury last year, but it was kind of one of those fluke injuries, foot in the middle of the line. I don't think it's not like it's an ACL or an Achilles or something like that. I think Derrick Henry in the middle of the first round is a home run.
So I'm about to get skewered for this. I'm coming on a show that's broadcast to some local Tennessee radio station, and I'm about to poop on the Derrick Henry parade. So let's do this. Okay. The fight is on. Skewer me away, Tennessee Titans fans. So I really will not be drafting a whole lot of Derrick Henry this year.
Okay.
So Derrick Henry, he's 28 and a half years old. He has a metal plate in his foot after breaking his foot last year. He was on pace for the most touches in NFL history before going down. He was going to crack 500 combined touches. Wow. That is a lot of work. You're giving this guy 30 touches a game. And you mean to tell me that the only way that Henry is going to be an elite running back in fantasy is if he is leading all other players by 6, 7, 8 touches a game? That sounds to me like a recipe to get injured. That sounds to me like a recipe for him to wear down. I don't want my running backs getting touches. I want them to score as many fantasy points as possible with as few touches as possible. That's why I like someone like, historically, I've liked Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift, Austin Eckler. I want them to be a little bit more of a pass catcher. Yes, Derrick Henry's target share went way up. He had way more receiving work last year than ever before. And I love to see that. The problem, it was 2 receptions a game. Hard to get me out of bed in the morning with 2 receptions a game. I agree it was progress, but how much more progress can we expect at age 28? So to me, I just have a hard time buying Derrick Henry for those reasons. But then we also look at the offense. And like you said, there's a lot of targets up for grabs, right? No more AJ Brown, no more Ferkser.
Nope.
No more Julio, though that might be a net positive. But so the offense, put another way, looks way worse. I think it's going to be a bad offense. You're telling me that we've got ACL recovery Robert Woods and Nick Westbrook and then rookie Treylon Burks. I think it's going to be a bad offense. And Derrick Henry, a lot of where he has lived has been in the end zone. A lot of his fantasy production comes from getting 100%. He monopolizes the goal line work. No other running back in that system is getting the carries in the red zone.
Unless you consider Tannehill and the read option work, because there's a lot of stolen rushing touchdowns from quarterbacks in this offense. And Malik Willis may be an option in the red zone this year too. Anyways, sorry.
That's a good point. That's why I said running back carries, is I made sure, because I'm with you. Tannehill, I remember someone posted the stat on Twitter that like sneakily Tannehill has more rushing touchdowns the last few years than Lamar Jackson. So yeah, he's a sneaky goal line threat, but they're not going to be in the red zone as much. They're not going to be at the goal line as much because if it's a worse offense overall. And I just really struggle to see how force feeding Derrick Henry 25 between the 20s carries a game is going to give me an overall RB1, RB2 finish. So for me at these prices, as Mark Cuban says, I'm out.
No, hey, you got some valid points there. I think one small rebuttal I would say is a lot of these running backs that the fantasy community as a whole love, right? The Austin Ecklers, the Swifts, those satellite backs, a lot of those guys end up injured more often than not. And I don't know if it's just a smaller frame or it's the people or who they are, their body type, whatever that is. One thing I think we can all agree on with Henry is he's in uncharted territory already. He's already, averaging more carries than any other running back at his age. He's already defied odds, so to speak, in some of the seasons with the ability to stay healthy, not only stay healthy, but a lot of times down the stretch in that playoff run, we've seen guys, and we saw this a few years ago, right? Those underutilized backs that have not got a lot of carries and they carry you the last few weeks of the season. I know a guy that started Rex Burkhead in the playoffs last year and carried him to a championship. We saw it a few years back when Boston Scott and Miles Sanders were both top 10 running backs for like the last 4 weeks. Derrick Henry is like the opposite of that. He's a guy that can be an RB1 for you, I think, the first half of the season. And then D. Henber happens, and he's pretty good in there too. So I hope that I'm not wrong for my Titans, but I absolutely see the risk there, right? I just think typically that's a guy who for the last few seasons has had that upside and always gets drafted back round of the first, and it's happening again. So we'll see. All right. Is there any other guy that you want to hit on before we move on to some of these more middle rounds and that you either think they're a big risk in the first few rounds or a big value where they're being taken at right now?
I'll talk up 2 receivers that I really like mid to late round 2, Mike Evans and T. Higgins. I think these are both exceptionally great targets for you in your fantasy draft. With Mike Evans, he's been a borderline wide receiver 1 when playing with Godwin, Antonio Brown, Gronk, Fournette. But then you look up this year and there's our man crush, Russell Gage, who's probably not quite as good as Godwin. As much as I like Gage, he's not Godwin. There's no more Antonio Brown, who was an absolute target monster anytime he was on the field last year. And suddenly you're like, you know what? I can see Mike Evans getting back to a 20% target share. And when there's 700 or more pass attempts in that offense,
and they
next
play
year,
fast.
you're like, what?
And they play fast.
They play fast. They pass a lot. Yeah, I think they had 719 pass attempts last year, which was by far the most in the NFL. I am very excited about Mike Evans getting a nice large share of that pie. I think so. He's been around like 100, 110 targets the last couple of seasons. I think he can get back to around 130 now that Antonio Brown's not there, now that Godwin is injured. We already know that he has just outrageous touchdown potential. He's basically a lock for 13, 14, 15 touchdowns a season when he's playing with someone like Tom Brady. And if you're telling me that he's going to get more targets, more yards than previous seasons, I'm all for it because he's in his prime. Sometimes it feels like he's been around forever. And then you look up and realize the guy's not even 30. I think he's still 28 years old, truly in his prime. You want Mike Evans. And then T. Higgins. What is the knock on T. Higgins? The knock is that he is not his team's wide receiver one. I'm sorry. That is why I cannot draft him in the late second, early third round.
Come on.
That's not an excuse. That has nothing to do with fantasy points. You're just telling me his place on the depth chart. I want to talk about fantasy points. And the second half of last season when he had recovered from his shoulder injury. Even if you include Jamar Chase's 11 catch, 266 yard, 3 touchdown game, second half of last season, T. Higgins had more fantasy points per game than Jamar Chase. Do I think Jamar Chase will outscore him this year? Yes. That is why Jamar Chase goes in round 1. He is the super ultra ridiculous prospect who set the rookie receiving yards record. But if T. Higgins is pretty much keeping pace, they're getting a similar amount of targets. We know that T. Higgins, he's 6'4". He works down the field. He's got touchdown upside. He's tied to Joe Burrow. That is the player that you want to take a shot on. Incredibly high floor and incredibly high ceiling.
They're going to have some shootouts, right? That offense is going to be in shootouts. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot. I'm big on T. Higgins. I tried my darndest last year when he was kind of having a weird start to the season. I was joking around that he was touchdown dependent with one of my buddies, just trying to get him to trade him to me, and that did not work. He kind of did have that little bit of a weird start after like getting banged up, but man, it's crazy to think that there's 2 guys that are in, I think, the top 8 dynasty receivers right now that you want with Chase and Higgins. So right there with you on that one. I do think Chase being drafted in the first round of redrafts is a little scary just because he was big play dependent last year a little bit. He's still going to get the volume, so I completely get it, but I think there's some safer options right there.
So I initially was like, oh, Jamar Chase, round 1 feels a little early. Here's why I've now been back in on Jamar Chase round 1.
Okay.
So I'm going to lose my analyst card by saying this. I was not super in on Justin Jefferson at the end of round 2 last year until towards the end of the summer. I kind of came around, but for most of last summer, I was like, man, in a low pass volume offense, really? It's Mike Zimmer. He's going to run the crap out of the ball. You want me to draft Justin Jefferson? He was crazy efficient. The efficiency is going to go down. Did you see what his yards per target was? There's no way. And then Jefferson got better because rookies often will then get better in year 2. So with Chase, maybe I'm just going to get burned because there might only be one Justin Jefferson. But thinking through that, I decided I just don't think I can fade someone that has that historic rookie season, because what if he gets better? And that, yes, I do think the efficiency will go down, but I think the target volume could go up. Maybe they pass more. So that's kind of what ultimately my thought process for getting back in. Because I'm with you. I saw he was going pick 5, pick 6, and I thought that feels early for Chase. And then as I thought about it more, I was like, you know what? This makes sense. We just saw it with Jefferson. It's why a lot of people, the cool thing now is to make fun of Jalen Waddle's ADP if you're an analyst. And I'm like, I kind of like Jalen Waddle. If he's going in the 3rd, 4th round, he just set the rookie receiving or rookie receptions record.
Yeah.
Why should I just fade this guy? Why don't we just fade Tyreek Hill, the guy that's coming over here
spicy
and might be good only because of, or not might be good, but like might be an elite fantasy asset because of Mahomes. Maybe he's just really good, not great with Tua. So I've learned I just cannot bet against productive rookie receivers.
Oh, we could dive into that more, but we got some stuff to get to. So I'll move on. Great points there, Josh. All right. So we're going to look at ADP rounds 4 through 8, some more risk and value guys. So I think this is the meat and potatoes of the draft right here. These picks 4 through 8 can win or lose you drafts very easily because you're filling out the rest of your starting lineup. You know, some guys will reach in this area more than take the guy that they know is a good pick. So let's talk about one of everybody's favorite values in this round. And I don't know how much of a value he's going to be as we actually get to redraft season. Allen Robinson is just shooting up boards. At one point you could get him in the 8th, 9th round. Now I've seen him as high as the 5th round. And I think that's only going to continue. So where are you at on Allen Robinson this season? terrible last season. We get that. New offense, new system. Where are you at?
So with Allen Robinson, a lot of people have said, well, you don't really want to draft this guy because did you see Robert Woods last season? Robert Woods had a terrible year, right? I mean, why would you draft Allen Robinson? And that's what they tell me. And then I look, and Robert Woods was the wide receiver 16 in fantasy points per game before getting injured. And do you want to know who is better than Robert Woods? Allen Robinson.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, Allen Robinson has 4 seasons of 150 or more targets. He's proven. Cooper Kupp had his first season of 150 or more targets last year. I think Cooper Kupp is the alpha there. I think he's better. But Allen Robinson has a better track record. He's actually sneakily younger than Cooper Kupp. It's because Cooper Kupp came into the league at age 24. So people often think he's a lot younger than he really is. Robinson is younger. I think it's going to be a lot more similar between those two than people realize. I prefer Kupp. We just saw him have the best receiver season in fantasy football history. Of course, you prefer Cooper Kupp. But Allen Robinson, I think, is going to cut into quite a bit of that, those Matthew Stafford targets. He just has a track record of excellence. And it is finally, oh, thank you. Our prayers have been answered. He gets an actually legitimate quarterback. I mean, he has been put through the ringer in his NFL career.
I almost wonder how much of last year was him just not wanting to be there. You know, he really got burnt leaving Jacksonville, playing on the franchise tag, getting hurt, hurting his value, going to Chicago. I wonder how much, and that's something we'll never know, but it will definitely be interesting to see how he bounces back this year. I want to talk about a guy that I'm fading a ton, and this is a guy that some might say is a value where he's getting drafted because he's fallen in drafts to this point, but I'm fading DK Metcalf. And for some reasons you've mentioned earlier, we don't like guys in bad offenses, and I'm afraid to see what this offense is going to look like this year. And look, I got a buddy of mine, Ian, who also hosts on this channel, and Ian's like, oh, he's going to be fine. Did you see Geno pepper him with targets? So I went back and looked. If he stayed on that pace, it was going to be somewhere in the 90 targets, 21 touchdowns. I don't think the touchdowns are sustainable. And if he only finishes with 90 targets, I don't think that's a guy that you want as your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. You need more volume than that. And when they get towards the red zone, they're going to be a Seattle offense, and they're going to run the ball with one of those 3 running backs, Rashad Penny or Kenneth Walker, whoever you want to be the top dog there this year. There's some argument on that also. But I am scared to death to draft DK Metcalf in the 4th or maybe even 5th round. Am I crazy?
So after getting skewered for my Derrick Henry opinions, we can once again come back together. I'm having my moment. I also think you should not be drafting DK Metcalf. Yeah. When people talk about, oh, look at the fantasy points with Geno, I say, well, look at the targets with Geno. Geno Smith was operating an incredibly low pass volume offense because he's not very good. And DK Metcalf was averaging more than 2 fewer targets per game with Geno than with Russ. So sure, if you want to assume that like every 4 times that Geno targets Metcalf, he scores, if that's the world, this false reality you want to live in, by all means, you can keep living in it. Unicorns are real. But if you want to actually come back to reality, come back to 2022, DK Metcalf is in a terrible spot. I just do not want to be drafting Seahawks. Like you said, good offenses. I have done so much research on this. We, as fantasy analysts, we're really bad at almost everything in life. But you don't know what we're really good at. We are really, really good at predicting which offenses will be good. There is pretty much no chance that if the quarterbacks stay healthy, offenses like the Chargers, the Buccaneers, the Chiefs, these offenses are going to be good.
Yeah.
I just don't quite understand how I am supposed to will the Geno Smith / Drew Lock QB committee to providing fantasy football goodness for Metcalf, for Lockett, for Noah Fant.
Yep.
I basically just don't want any Seahawks. Since through all my research, yes, there are occasionally players that rise above. Mm-hmm. However, the percent of guys that are going to rise above is so low, and you're going to have so many more misses than hits if you're trying to live in a world of plucking out the guys from these terrible offenses that go really early in drafts as to who is going to make it, who is not. I don't want to do that. I will just not be drafting DK Metcalf.
And he's not even in a situation where it's kind of a low volume passing attack, but he's the unequivocal number one target, right? I think that they're going to target Fant. I think they're going to target Lockett. He's not a guy like Darnell Mooney, who may be the only pass catcher there, or in previous years, the Titans, A.J. Brown was the number one target. So I think he could be the number one target in the offense, but I don't know by how much. And that's another reason I kind of want to fade him there. Let's play the what if machine really quick. If Baker Mayfield ends up being the quarterback prior to week 1 in Seattle, does that change your opinion at all?
So with Baker Mayfield, yes.
Okay.
I will be drafting Metcalf occasionally. I think Baker is much more of a competent quarterback.
Yeah.
However, I'm still not going to, I think I want my exposure to be below the field. And when I say that, if you're in a 12-team league and you do 12 drafts, that means on average, you're getting every player in one draft. If you do 24 drafts, on average, you're getting every player twice. I do hundreds of drafts. And the way that I look at it is I would want to take someone, let's say Baker's the quarterback. I'm not taking Metcalf right now, but maybe I go, you know what? 1 in every 20 to 25 drafts. Now I'm taking Metcalf if I see him. So still significantly less exposure to Metcalf than most people, but I would at least, I would entertain the option. But the problem is we have the most medieval archaic play calling you could possibly imagine with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll has future Hall of Fame quarterback Russell Wilson with him for 8 seasons and always has a below average pass rate. Pretty difficult to get me on board with the play calling. And if this was kind of a stinky offense last year, because the whole team's kind of crumbling around everyone other than Russell Wilson, if it's kind of a stinky offense and a bad supporting cast and we lose Russell Wilson, it was already not a good passing offense last year. It's just really hard to convince me it's going to be good this year. So Baker would help, but I do not think that he is the panacea.
So one of the easiest breakout running back candidates this season is also kind of a value near this round. I don't know if you are on that bandwagon or not. I was out on Travis Etienne. I wasn't out on Travis Etienne last year, but going into dynasty rookie drafts, he wasn't a guy that I was targeting at that ADP. I like Javonte Williams more, but now I think it's almost over reset where he's becoming a value in drafts. How are you feeling about Etienne? It is not going to be a great offense, but they're going to be playing from behind, and he's going to have opportunity there with James Robinson still recovering.
Yeah, I really like Travis Etienne. We talked earlier about how I like the pass catching running backs. They score fantasy points efficiently. That is what Travis Etienne is going to do. Travis Etienne has first round draft capital. He had back-to-back seasons in college with over 1,600 rushing yards. He had over 1,000 receiving yards combined in his final 2 seasons. And what I like about Travis Etienne is he gets the best of both worlds. Let's talk about what I mean by that. So one thing that people sometimes are like, so Trevor Lawrence, he is a mobile quarterback. He had a lot of rushing production last year. He did in college as well. And they say, what's cool about a mobile quarterback is they're going to make the linebackers uncomfortable and they're going to open up wider running lanes for the running back, which gives them more yards per carry, more big plays running the ball. I agree. I think that's great. That's good for Etienne. What is the downside? People say, well, if you look at mobile quarterbacks, why would they ever check the ball down and throw it out to the running back if they're so fast and they can just scramble for 5, 6, 7 yards themselves? That is true. That is
James Cook. Sorry. I had to get that out. James Cook. Sorry.
So that's why, like with Lamar Jackson, you do not see Lamar Jackson target the running back. Why would he ever target the running back when he averages 6 yards a carry and he's the fastest player on the field? But with Trevor Lawrence, this is the best of both worlds because he is mobile enough to keep the linebackers uncomfortable. And we have a 3-year history of him playing with Travis Etienne at college at Clemson, heavily targeting him. I really think Etienne is in a smash spot. It is a bad offense. Obviously, you always wish there's more touchdown upside there, but just the usage itself, like what we saw with DeAndre Swift, when prior to Swift's injury, he was a top 8 fantasy points per game running back. I think that is the type of ceiling we can see with Travis Etienne, and he goes in the 5th round.
You're getting him 4 rounds later than you're getting Swift. And I'm right there with you. I think he has similar upside. So I think he's a good one. Anyone that you want to mention, I know I have a big list here. I think I'll touch on a few guys just really quick, just to kind of name drop. I'm a little nervous about Cam Akers this year. Even though he's getting drafted later in last year, I'm just worried they're going to go to more of a committee approach. Drake London, I think the volume may be there, but again, I just don't want to bet anything on that offense. So those are some risk guys for me. Anybody else? Mike Williams, I cannot believe he is going as late as he is after having the breakout last year. That one kind of shocks me. But anyway, anybody else that you want to, even one of those guys I mentioned that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm with you on Mike Williams. I'm a Chargers fan. Even though the team doesn't love me and they moved out of San Diego and moved to LA, I am just like that desperate guy. I'm like just grabbing at the coattails of my ex-girlfriend. I'm like, come back. I'm sorry. I'll do the dishes next time. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I'm still a Chargers fan. And Mike Williams was a wide receiver 1 per game last year. It was like the wide receiver 12, wide receiver 13 per game.
Yep.
And his first year in a new role where his average depth of target came way down and the target volume went way up. And it turned out that he just lives in that zone and he's incredible in that role. So I don't know why we shouldn't expect improvement in his second year in that role. So I agree with you there. One guy that you mentioned was Drake London. As I've talked about many times, I just love the young, exciting players. I love the rookies. I love the guys going into year 2. But with London, I'm with you. The way that I see it is I don't think London's going to be the main target getter in that offense. I think it's going to be Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is significantly bigger, significantly faster, and just showed that he can command high target volume and have over 1,000 receiving yards in the NFL. To me, Kyle Pitts looks like the most likely by quite a bit number 1 option in that offense. So if you're saying that I'm going to get the number 2 passing option and I have to pay like round 6, round 7 prices in the stinky Atlanta Falcons offense where we know there's going to be no pass volume. Mariota, Desmond Ridder, they are both very mobile. They are not quarterbacks that you want to funnel a high volume pass offense through. This could be pretty stinky outside of Pitts. And like, at least with Pitts, it's like, hey, I mean, even if London and Pitts have similar seasons, Pitts is doing way better because, hey, you can put him in your tight end slot. Drake London is clogging up a receiver slot.
Yep.
I've waffled because I really don't like fading good young players. But for this year, I like Drake London in Dynasty. But for redraft, it is just a tough sell to see him being highly fantasy relevant.
So the next section we're going to look at here is favorite late round values. And I am about to be so selfish, Josh. When I saw the name you put on our show sheet for one of your favorite late round values, I shed a happy tear. I had to compose myself before we started recording because I am a Rachaad White truther. And I didn't expect to see him in a redraft show. I'm not going to lie. I'm targeting him there. I like Rachaad White this season. Tell me why I can finally be justified here in my Rachaad White love. It's a total man crush. So I can't even really tell you. I could go into the sides. I can tell you the upside. I can tell you why Leonard Fournette is not as solid as people may think. But tell me, justify me just a little bit here. Make me feel good.
So you're like, I'm a Rashod. I didn't know we could use truther when they haven't played a snap. You're acting like the community has hated him and you're holding on hope. Do people not like him? Does your co-host not like him? Put him on blast. Who does not like Rachaad White? Where is this voice in your head coming from?
I drafted him. We just did the Rate My League show with one of my home leagues. It's one of my favorite leagues that I'm in, just a very active league, right? And I ended up getting the 106, 107, and 108, right, in that league. I drafted Rachaad White at 107. Now, I also got Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, so don't beat me up, all right? But I am so high on Rachaad White. I think I liked Rachaad White's profile better than Kenneth Walker's in this draft. And if I needed I needed a running back, that's the guy I wanted. I drafted him over James Cook. So I guess I'm just a little above consensus, so to speak. But I think this is a guy for me. If Leonard Fournette, who hasn't been able to always stay healthy, if he misses a stretch,
has never stayed healthy.
Yeah,
he's missed games every single year. Yeah.
Yep. White's a guy that has running back one upside week in and week out to me. He's a complete back. They're already raving about him in camp. I'm not trying to get too much on the OTA hype, but this is a guy with day 2 draft capital. just an impressive profile. He is a little bit older. He's 23, right? Coming in as a rookie, but he's a do-it-all back with size. What am I missing?
So I like Rachaad White too. I think 107, that might be a little bit of a reach in Josh Larky land, but I understand the idea behind it. What I've been thinking is that when I do managed redraft leagues, Rachaad White is one of my absolute top targets, because if let's think about, we all do a lot of drafting.
Mm-hmm.
Think about you filled out your first 6, 7, 8, 9 picks. At that point, you should have your starting lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Every pick that you make after that needs to have enough upside to push one of those guys you've already drafted out of your starting lineup. With Rachaad White, it's very easy to picture when that would happen, because I think any time that Leonard Fournette misses a game, Rachaad White is a legitimate top 3 weekly option. He's 215 pounds. He ran in the 4.4s.
Yep. He
got the day 2 draft capital in round 3, so we know he's good. At Arizona State, he had over 1,000 rushing yards and I think a 16, 17, 18% target share. And as a senior, he had nearly 500 receiving yards. He had over 10 yards per reception. And you might think, yards per reception, that's a bogus stat. Why are you an analyst guy with that? It is because that indicates that he was lining up out wide frequently, which he did in college. I love to see, I hate to see my running backs run between the 20s. I hate to see them run up the middle. Love to see them lining up wide and commanding targets. Rachaad White is basically going to be what Leonard Fournette was the second half of last year, which is a top 3 running back in fantasy football. Anytime Fournette goes down, there is even that potential for standalone value. Maybe he just carves out such a unique role for himself that, hey, we saw you line up out wide in college. Cool. Until Godwin comes back, we've got Gage and Evans. Sometimes we'll throw you outside. We'll throw you in the slot. And he's just a legitimate weapon. So I really like Rachaad White.
The offense has experience with David Johnson, right? And they're already saying he has that similar profile. If he ends up getting that role in that offense, and look, Leonard Fournette is an aging back. The big contract, I get it, but we're also, people are talking about Leonard Fournette like he's just a staple. There's no moving him. This is the same guy who lost his job to James Robinson a few years ago. Completely different situation. I get it. But let's not act like this is a one-of-one type player. This is also a guy who got benched for Ronald Jones for a stretch. So if he comes out and is slow to start at all, which he has already early in camp, Rachaad White is just going to continue to eat into some of that work. I think he's going to have work early on. I think he'll have standalone value personally. But of course, the major upside is if something happens to Fournette, which history tells us will likely happen. So I'm right there with you on him. Okay. So that was one of your late round guys. Another one that you listed here that I really like, we're both just going to tick off all the Gabriel Davis fans right now. Jamison Crowder.
So Jamison Crowder is probably going to be number 2 on the team in targets if he stays healthy. People don't want to hear that. Jamison Crowder has been a target hog every single year in the league. He kind of lives in that 20% target share range. Gabe Davis has a career high 11% target share, which is not quite Jamison Crowder's career high 23 or 24% that he's had in multiple seasons. Jamison Crowder is good. When I used to work at Player Profiler, and we had a game charting team over there. We'd watch the games. And those game charters who were getting paid to watch football because they were good at watching football would chart per route how often receivers are winning their routes and getting open. Do you want to know who got open on the highest percentage of their routes all of last year? It was Jamison Crowder. And yes, I'm not saying he's the best receiver in the NFL, because I understand that he was playing in the slot. He's facing weaker coverage, but still, there were no other slot receivers that were beating him. Jamison Crowder is very, very good. He's still in his prime. He's 29, so he's at the back end of his prime. But I think he's going to give you one more really, really strong season. With him, it's just health. And where he's going, I'm willing to take that risk a lot of the time, because if he stays healthy, you're looking at significantly better version of Cole Beasley. We've seen Cole Beasley flirt with wide receiver 2 numbers. And I think Jamison Crowder, where it's pretty much just Stephon Diggs and then question marks around whether Davis, Knox, these guys take the next step. What's James Cook's role going to be? Crowder can slot right into 20% of the targets in a high volume pass attack with Josh Allen's cannon at the helm.
So I'm right there with you on Crowder. I mean, we're looking at Emmanuel Sanders last year was 34, I think, playing in that offense, and he had high upside weeks. So now we get 29-year-old Jamison Crowder potentially in the same role. I'm all over that. So I'm right there
100%.
with you. A guy that I want to touch on real quick, one of my favorite late round value guys, and this is if you're a zero RB truther or whatever, here's the guy you're targeting, Kenneth Gainwell. Late in drafts. I'm all over that. We look at that offense. The Eagles offense last year was a tale of two halves of the season. Early in the season, they wanted to pass the ball all the time. It seemed like later in the season, they went to that more heavy run approach. I don't think they're going to stick with a heavy run approach. They traded for AJ Brown. I think that's what that offense wants to be, is a more pass happy offense. And when you go back and look, Kenneth Gainwell as a rookie, not just a rookie, but a rookie who had not played football in over a year because he sat out for COVID, right? Had 2 games in the first 5 weeks that were 8 target games. I think he finished with like 6 catches. I don't have the stats pulled up on me, so I'm sure I'll get fact checked, but I'm almost positive on that. I had 2 8 target games in that first 5 weeks. He had a 17-point game and like a 15-point game as well. And then his targets slowly start to drip down. And they're like, okay, well, he's just a target guy. They used him in the red zone. He had 6 total touchdowns in the red zone last season as a rookie. Kenneth Gainwell had a sneaky good rookie season that nobody talks about, I feel like. And now he comes in with a guy, they didn't draft anybody to compete against him. They did sign Kennedy Brooks, which I get. I know everybody's on the Kennedy Brooks train. They signed him as an undrafted free agent. We did a show on him with Peter Howard. He was one of the highest signed guys, like paid undrafted free agents, right? But that's still not competing with Kenneth Gainwell and his draft capital, and the fact that he wasn't a Jag last year. He wasn't just a guy. He was a really good player as a rookie stepping into that role. I think the sky's the limit for Kenneth Gainwell this year. I think he is a sneaky flex option. And as you mentioned, right, we're looking for guys in those rounds where we can, I really liked how you broke that down, who can unseat one of those earlier guys we drafted. And Gainwell, if he's getting 7-8 targets a game, if that's the goal, and you have AJ Brown to take off coverage as well, he's a yak monster. He was in college. I want every bit of Kenneth Gainwell I can get. I was high on him last year. I'm high on him this year.
Yeah, I like Gainwell too. If anything happens to Miles Sanders, you could be looking at an RB1. Even with Miles Sanders, you might be able to slot him into your RB2 slot in a lot of weeks, especially because one thing that I've learned over time is that with the way defenses play offenses, it's often pretty sticky, which defenses allow the dump offs to the running back. And that will stabilize pretty quickly early on in the season. So then you can even know, all right, this could be a Gainwell week, and let's throw him into the starting lineup because this defense is an absolute sieve when it comes to the running back position and targets. So I'm with you.
All right, Josh, we've already been going on it for a while, probably longer than we were originally planning to. Before we wrap up, we're going to have to skip the deep sleeper segment. We had some deep sleepers, but I want you to name one for the listening audience who is one deep sleeper for 2022 and these are the guys that we hang our hat on. If they hit, we're like, yeah, we're smarter than everybody. And if they don't hit, it's like, oh, it was a deep sleeper, right? So who's one of those guys for you? And if you want to name 2, I got time if you do.
So I like Chris Evans. I think running backs are often the best deep sleepers just because they can be one injury away from legitimate fantasy production. A little bit harder sometimes with receiver and tight end to get that. So I think Chris Evans, he could very well be the direct backup to Joe Mixon. Samaje Perine's not getting any younger, and he just didn't look good last year. Chris Evans was a rookie, and he still managed to see the field at times. He was very efficient when called upon, pretty dynamic in the receiving game. So I see RB1 potential with him if something happens to Mixon, and he's basically free in every single format. The other one, all right, Titans fans, you can pat me on the back again. I'll mention Dontrell Hilliard. He hasn't really done anything in his career, and the next thing you know, he is just getting hyper targeted and looking really, really good with the Titans, and somehow also looking pretty solid on the ground as well. Dontrell Hilliard, I mean, with Derrick Henry, I think there is injury risk. Yes, he's been a kind of a pillar of consistency and health prior to last season, but I just think the archetype of the 350 carry running back in their late 20s is exposing himself to so many potential collisions. I really like Dontrell Hilliard, who I think he's not going to outscore Derrick Henry per game if he's the starting running back, but I think he can get pretty close because of that receiving volume. And I think you could be looking at 17, 18 fantasy points a game in PPR formats if Hilliard starts anytime Henry's injured. So to me, he's free everywhere, and that's one more deep sleeper.
So one of my, and I don't know if you classify this as a deep sleeper. I see him going at the end, like 14th, 15th round of redrafts, like your second to last round in redraft. So he's a deep sleeper for me. And he's a Titan. Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper has tight end one upside, not the overall tight end one. Don't kill me. I think he has tight end one. He can finish as a top 12 guy. And here's why. You look at the Titans. We already talked about the 351 targets they have to replenish, right? We already talked about Robert Woods is coming off an ACL. Something that I don't think enough people look at. We look at numbers, right? And we get so excited about players without really looking at coaching staff and history. And when you look at the Titans coaching staff and their history, they are very slow to bring along rookies. And everybody wants to talk about Kyle Phillips right now. Everybody wants to talk about Treylon Burks. And hey, I'm a Titans fan. I hope those guys are studs. But even A.J. Brown took a little bit of time, took closer to midseason to really become a focal point in that offense. And we all know the talent that A.J. Brown was. Actually, when you look at that team, when you look at the Titans overall, and you can even look at the defensive side, there's been some stud rookies or stud players that just didn't see the field as rookies, oddly enough. Christian Fulton right now last year was a PFF darling at cornerback. If you don't believe me, go look. And he hardly played as a rookie. They brought Jeffrey Simmons on along slowly. He was coming back from injury, but you can literally just go down the list. David Long is going to be one of their starting linebackers this year, and they moved into the practice squad a few times his rookie year. That's just what they do. I don't think they're going to hand over the keys to these young guys soon. I think Robert Woods, if he can get healthy, has an opportunity for that. But Austin Hooper is going to get these targets. He's going to be the tight end one on the team. And we're talking about a team that has in the past heavily targeted the tight end. If you play in one of those leagues that's an extra half point for first down, go back and watch Ryan Tannehill film and look at who he targets. He targets his slot guy and he targets his tight ends for first downs. Anthony Ferkser became a thing. Like people were saying he was a sleeper last year. And I guess that's what I don't get. Anthony Ferkser was a sleeper last year, but everybody's just forgot about Austin Hooper, who has had tight end one seasons when he has the volume. I'm really excited about him in this offense, and I think he's being slept on.
I like Hooper too.
Okay.
Austin Hooper could end up being the number 2 targets guy on this team. You just never know with the ACL. I think Treylon Burks is going to out-target him. Burks has a pretty good prospect profile. He got the round 1 draft capital. Mm-hmm. Woods, I'm just always worried when it's a 30-year-old coming off of an ACL tear. Wouldn't totally surprise me if Hooper ends up being number 2 on this team in targets. I think he's probably the number 3 behind Burks and Woods, but wouldn't shock me if somehow he out-targets one of those two. And like you said, he's basically free.
Tight end premium leagues, listen up. That's the guy to go grab. He's my 3rd tight end in a 12-team dynasty. And I'm tickled pink about it. Josh, man, I have really appreciated you coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure. Tell everybody one last time. I know you're going to kind of be an analytical nomad this next month. I think it's so neat that someone like yourself who has had success in the fantasy world is talking about taking time to work on themselves, to talk with other people in the space and use time for growth. I think too often we think, oh, we're here, we're ready to go. And we don't look to continually grow. So kind of tell everybody what your plan are and kind of where they can find your stuff.
So you can find me on Twitter at Larky Tweets, and you'll find out later this month what the next steps are. So yeah, just talking with a lot of people out there that I respect with their leadership styles or just the way that they understand management of others, how to empower others. And that is pretty much what my journey this month is going to be as I prepare for a new role where I will be hopefully the manager that I would love to work under. I think that is a noble goal to strive for. So that is what I'm going to be doing So I will be doing a lot of learning from others during this time. So Evan, thank you for having me. This was good. Good stuff.
Hey.
We crushed the analysis. I angered some Titans fans. My work here is done.
You angered Titans fans. That's great. I'm still tickled pink. We both love Rachaad White. That makes me feel good about myself because I'm a little nervous about my Derrick Henry stock now. I'm not gonna lie. Your points were on point. I can't argue most of them, and that's hard. If you watch any of the shows, you know I love to argue. So hey, you're good in my book, man. I really appreciate it. Came on, you brought the fire. J Larky tweets, J Larky TikTok. I've seen you on TikTok. I liked one of the videos. Go follow him right now. Let's hit the outro.
Thank you for listening. Follow For FF's Sake on all social media platforms and search for us wherever you get your podcasts.